Nintendo. We all know them. We all love them. My uncle works there. These are 5 underappreciated Nintendo franchises we're going to take a look at. These are underappreciated not by fans, not by gamers, but by Nintendo themselves, as happens with a lot of very great companies, Konami, that started out really, really awesome, although Nintendo is still pretty cool. A lot of times things go by the wayside that could be way better. So let's hop into it. The first one, number 5, is Kid Icarus. Now, what can be said about Kid Icarus? There is far more material of Palutena Rule 34 floating around on the internet than there are real Kid Icarus games.
Right.
I think that says something.
Right.
Because Palutena, it says Palutena is waifu, is bae, is hot.
Right.
But it also says that since 1986, there have only been 3 games in this entire franchise, which, let's be honest, is pretty pathetic in terms of releases, especially when you have people like Masahiro Sakurai on your staff who are actually passionate about this franchise.
Yeah, well, it kind of tells me that Nintendo themselves are limiting him on what he can do, because he has come out in the past and said how he likes Kid Icarus.
Yeah, and he was really the pivotal reason in Uprising, getting released and stuff.
Right.
People are going to think you're ripping crazy.
It's actually the chair.
It's a camping chair. We're
so
outdoorsy here.
Yeah, and I feel like if Sakurai did not petition for Uprising to even be released, that would never even come out. Nintendo would not have cared at all about that.
No, they would have no problem letting it rot, because
they would have been like, how about we re-release Twilight Princess for the 40th time again?
Right. Well, and that's the problem, is I know it's a business, obviously, but this is the same problem I have with things like DC Comics and Marvel Comics and a lot of these other brands, is they will do things with existing characters only, and when they want to make a change or they want to do something interesting, they'll be like, let's go to Batman and change something, or let's go to Superman and change something, because it'll sell. Right. And it's like, well, what if you built up this other character, so eventually they were at the point that these characters are at, so they could sell more?
No.
And that's the problem, I think, is with Kid Icarus, there's a really interesting lore behind it. You have essentially the angels and everything going on there, and you have the combat, side-scroller stuff happening. There's actually a lot of room for different playstyles in the Kid Icarus franchise, I think. But the problem is just nobody seems to care, because I don't think the money is really there. But the money's not there because they were so negligent with it. If they had made more than 3 games since 86, maybe there would be money there and maybe people would want to buy it. I mean, Metroid, despite being ignored sometimes for years at a time, is still a household name that people know about if they know about Nintendo.
Right.
So how come Metroid can do it, but Kid Icarus can't?
Well, I'll tell you the reason. It's because there's more than 3 Metroid games.
Exactly.
The original Kid Icarus game came out in 1986, which is older than I am, by the way. But 1986, when the first one came out, the second one came out in 1991, so they already waited 5 years in between 1 and 2. Then they waited 21 years until 2012 to just barely release one on the 3DS.
Sakurai was wringing his hands like, please God, I'm sick of Smash Bros, please.
He probably was threatening to quit or something, and then Nintendo was like, fine, we'll just release a Kid Icarus game.
Oh, can I
make
get
him
it?
happy.
Can I get it on the Wii U?
No.
Oh, okay.
3DS only.
Sorry, got it, okay.
And now it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And you can't release another one? Come on.
No, and it's such a niche thing now that I think most people don't know about it. They know Pit as the angel kid from Smash Bros.
Right.
And then they know Palutena
as the hot one.
That hot green-haired chick from Smash Bros. And the art I look at. I mean, people look at.
The other people.
The other people look at, not me on the Reddit.
And other people create, not you.
Not me at all, or fund. Number 4. It's the 4th one.
4.
The next one is Punch-Out. This flew under the radar for me a lot because it was really popular before I was born in the 80s. Then obviously in 94 there was Super Punch-Out. To me, Super Punch-Out is one of the standouts in the series, where it has all the classic gameplay, plus some enhancements, plus the SNES, better graphics than the originals. And then you get kind of a 15-year gap where the last game that was created was essentially a remake of the same exact concept. And what's weird about that is that later on, these would come to the Wii U. Some of them would be moved digitally there, but that's it.
Right. Yeah, and since 2009, it's been 13 years. Now, the Wii version of this game actually I thought was kind of cool. I don't know what the popular opinion of it, but I thought it was cool because it implemented the Wii balance board, actually. To me, the Punch-Out on the Wii was the best version of Wii Sports Boxing.
Yes.
So, where it really utilized all the features of the Wii.
And can I mention something with that, too? Like you said with the features, I know people might meme on things now, like the balance board and whatever. People meme on things like the Kinect and the balance board and stuff like that. I understand if you're not a fan of forced integration of it into, like, every game and stuff.
Right.
Fine. I am right there with you. But there are games that do those things very well. Just Dance is so much better on a Kinect than it is holding a stupid phone.
Right.
It's insane how much better it is on, like, the Xbox One Kinect. And in the same vein, something like Punch-Out, I feel like they could not implement the balance board and do other stuff, but it's pretty innovative of a way to use the balance board, because everybody else, it was just like middle-aged people and me checking their weight on the balance board every day and crying into a cupcake. And like that was like the only purpose to the balance board before that. It's like they actually used it for a fun game. That's cool.
Instead of like the balance board making them feel bad. Right. I saw, quick aside, I saw a funny picture. It was like a guy who was like crying and the balance board was like, oh! You've exceeded the maximum weight on the balance board.
And not to keep bringing up Smash Bros, but how many people do you think didn't even know who that was?
I didn't. I will say that. I did not.
I don't think I did at the time
I didn't
either.
until I actually looked into it.
And then we started playing Punch-Out.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, by the way. Every single one of these that we're going through, I just noticed there is representation of these franchises in Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
So Nintendo remembers they exist.
Right.
They just don't care to do it.
They just want to use the IP to basically
for a roster.
Right.
Like a roster slot.
Yeah.
Hey, we made this thing in 86.
Right.
Put it in our fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely have the capabilities to make another Punch-Out. They made ARMS, which is also a very, I think, an underappreciated Switch game. Yeah. It's a very fun game.
It's a proof of concept that shows the Punch-Out ideas still work.
I think my main problem with ARMS is just they didn't put enough content into it, but the game's good.
Yeah.
And I think if they brought Punch-Out to the Switch, it would be good. But why are we waiting 13 years for a game?
We're now at the point where if they did bring Punch-Out to the Switch, I feel like all the Punch-Out games are fairly short if you know what you're doing.
Right.
And you'd have to do a lot more, and I wonder if they'd even be willing to put that effort in at this point, because they haven't even been willing to put the effort into easy Punch-Out games.
Right.
Really in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So, number three. The next one is Pikmin. Nate, this is one of your favorite underrated franchises I want to let you talk more about than me.
Yeah, so I love Pikmin, and with the most recent announcement of Pikmin 4, which they said is going to come out in 2023, that would make it 10 years between Pikmin 3 and Pikmin 4. So the original Pikmin game came out in 2001 on the GameCube, Pikmin 2 came out in 2004 on the GameCube, then they released Pikmin 3 in 2013 on the Wii U.
9-year gap there.
9-year gap. Then they released a smaller 3DS game called Hey Pikmin in 2017. Then Pikmin 4 in 2023. So if we're ignoring ports, because they did port the original 2 Pikmin on the Wii.
Yeah.
So if we're ignoring ports, and then also the Pikmin 3 got remastered for the Switch. But it's the same game. It just got remastered for the Switch. Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2, 3-year gap between those two. Great. Then you have a 9-year gap between Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3. Then a 10-year gap is going to be between Pikmin 3 and Pikmin 4.
With a random little game in the middle, which is it's not bad,
no,
but it's not a full-on
it's not a full-on
AAA Pikmin game.
It's just like I think that one kind of is the same thing as Kid Icarus Uprising.
Yeah.
It was just, well, let's put a IP on the 3DS. With the Pikmin franchise, before they announced Pikmin 4, we've all been waiting here for like 6 years, with Pikmin 4 being rumored every single year at Nintendo Direct after Nintendo Direct of, oh, I think Pikmin 4 is coming out. So now it finally is, and I'm happy for that. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
But how come it's taking 10 years?
That's assuming 4 doesn't get delayed.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because, like, everything gets delayed now, which I'd rather it get delayed and be good.
Sure. There is a lot of people very angry about it, actually. They called it, like, Pick Mid. and like, oh wow, a title we don't care about.
Yeah, but most of these people have never played it.
Well, and that's the thing. But the thing that made me sad about it is I was like, there's a reason why some people think this franchise is mid, or why some people aren't willing to check it out. It's because just like Kid Icarus and Punch-Out and all the other ones we're going to mention, Nintendo doesn't do anything with them.
And they also market these essentially as toys for children.
Yeah.
Which they shouldn't be. I mean, at this point, gaming is for everybody. You're just as likely to come across a 40-year-old man enjoying the hell out of Super Mario Odyssey as you are to come across a 10-year-old doing it.
Right.
I hope you come across neither, because you probably broke into their home and stuff.
Right.
What are you playing, champ? Knocking at the window.
Are you winning, son? So I guess for me, it was like, you know, if Nintendo actually did something with these games, people wouldn't be saying they're mid games.
Right.
People would actually be willing to check them out because you're actually doing something with them instead of waiting 10 years in between AAA titles.
And you know, to add one final point in, because it's an outer space game, you essentially have limitless abilities of where you can take it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of one of my biggest problems with Pikmin, is that the setting is no issue. It's only limited by the creativity of the designers.
Yeah.
And yet they're not willing to design anything.
Yeah, exactly. If Nintendo actually cared about the franchise, this could actually be a really, really good, popular franchise.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're taking so long in between them, no one cares about it.
Right. But Pikmin is a little clever, you gotta admit.
It was clever. I thought that was
Number two, the numero dos. Star Fox. This one is frustrating to me because the last Star Fox was Zero in 2016, which was paired up with Star Fox Guard, which is not a full game. It's like a mini game of tower defenses. Zero was a full game, however, it was really limited by motion control issues.
Yeah.
So like, it's not a perfect game because one person pointed this out in the comments, I think like a year ago when we mentioned Star Fox, about whatever happened to Star Fox. I don't remember who it was. But one thing they mentioned that really stuck with me was a problem with Star Fox is it felt like Nintendo was always trying to use it as a proof of concept of what their tech could do.
Right.
Instead of actually implementing it cleverly. So your example of Punch-Out, where they implement the balance board instead of making you cry about your like third McDonald's of the day, they actually, you know, use it for a game that makes you feel good.
Right.
Well, with Star Fox, the problem is they were using imperfect technology to try and show off what they were doing. Like Star Fox Assault, I find the multiplayer fun, but it's extremely flawed. It has flaws and issues with it because it was being used a little bit as a proof of concept for the split screen capabilities of the GameCube and what they could do on ground now with different animations and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that was probably the least egregious of them, but one of the most egregious was the motion issues in Star Fox Zero. It's genuinely kind of disorienting when you're trying to play it, and it pulls you out of the experience a little bit. It's just sad. I've talked to a lot of people who put the game down and didn't finish it because of that, and that bums me out. And that's not even to mention the fact they didn't even ever release all their games that were finished.
Right. Yeah, the one you talked about was Star Fox 2.
Yeah.
So they have the original Star Fox, and then they made Star Fox 64, which was on the Nintendo 64. But they never actually made Star Fox 2, which was reportedly done for years. It's been done. It was supposed to come out on the SNES, but then they canceled it, and then decades later, in 2017, they released it digitally.
On the SNES Classic.
Right.
Which was price gouged and scalped to hell.
Right.
Basically, Nintendo created artificial scarcity with that console.
Right.
And then it drove up the price, and there wasn't really a good way to get Star Fox 2 for a while.
Well, and the problem that I have with Star Fox 2, and maybe this is only a problem with me, but Star Fox 2 should have come out on the SNES. You released it in 2017, but it still had all of the, like, you know, however many 30-year-old tech from the original Star Fox system.
Right.
And now when you play it in 2017, in my opinion, it kind of plays poorly.
64 got re-released. It was partially a proof of concept of the 3D capabilities of the 3DS. And the point that I'm getting at with that is, like that person said in the comments, I actually agree with that, not to just meld their opinion into my own, but I do agree that there were a lot of people put off by it. A lot of people, what they wanted was what Star Fox 1 and then 64 delivered. A super fun story with creative characters, fun flight that wasn't super realistic in outer space. They didn't want all this tacked on stuff.
Right.
And when you started tacking on all this stuff like and touting it as new features, I think they lost a lot of people over time, to the point where like a lot of the people who played Star Fox 64 aren't even gamers anymore.
Right.
They're like businessmen in their 40s who don't have time for gaming. Like
Right.
I mean, that'll never be me, but that's a lot of your core audience grew up and is gone, and you didn't bother to cultivate a new one.
Right. Well, I think that's what they tried to do with Star Fox Zero, but the problem with that is, like you said, the controls for it were bad because they try to utilize the gamepad with that, but the problem is you could not turn off those features.
Right.
So you're stuck with like these random gyro controls on the gamepad that didn't work properly. And half the time, half the game, you're sitting there like trying just to figure out the controls.
And only some of that you can turn off, I believe. There's like a couple features.
There was a couple things you could turn off,
but most you can't.
No.
Like a lot of it
No.
you're stuck with, especially when you're on ground.
Yeah.
When you're on ground running around.
That was the worst.
That's the worst part of the game
Yeah.
because of it.
Well, and the sad thing is, I actually like Star Fox Zero. I
Yeah.
played that game; it was fun.
I do too.
I mean, this is my favorite Nintendo franchise. So
And it looks great.
So maybe I am a little biased, but I had a lot of fun with it. They need to just make a game that is as good as Star Fox 64, and I feel like a lot of new members would get into the franchise again.
And usually what Nintendo says with things like Star Fox is like, well, we don't want to release something if we have nothing new to add. And it's like people don't want something super new. What they want is an updated core version of what you did in 64.
Right.
They just want 64 with graphics now, maybe some new features that are fun, and that's it.
Right.
It's not rocket science.
Right.
Number one! Splat.
Nintendo has just given the absolute middle finger to every fan of F-Zero for years. Every single fan of racing games, they're like, hey, buddy, come over here. We got something to show you.
Mario Kart.
And then you get up there and they kick you in the balls and hand you a Mario Kart copy, basically.
Right.
Because, like, there's no room for anything, any racing. There's no room for Diddy Kong racing. There's no room for F-Zero or even the long-coveted Mickey's Speedway 2.
I was just gonna say that.
I thought you'd enjoy Mickey's Speedway 2.
I was just gonna bring up Mickey Speedway 2. I want it. I really want that, actually.
The thing that bothers me, though, jokes aside, is there really is this idea, and I get this idea from Nintendo on certain things. Like, I genuinely believe if there was another franchise out there that they owned, that they wanted to make, but it could somehow eat into sales of Zelda, right? Like, say they had made Zelda, and then they had made a few of this other game that was just like Zelda, really high quality, really good, but it didn't sell as well. Well, it seems to me like Nintendo's not releasing that game because they don't want to eat into Zelda, right? Because they don't want to release... So in this case, they don't want to release F-Zero, where it's a totally different, fun, really cool racing experience, and then have it eat into the sales of Mario Kart. Because even then, they put the Blue Falcon in Mario Kart. But you see things like Captain Falcon, you see him in Smash Bros. You see the F-Zero anime from way back in the early 2000s. You saw the GameCube stuff, you saw the Game Boy stuff. They've just let it rot, because the problem is it was never marketed enough, so it never had the strongest sales. So now, why would we release it? We already do all of our racing in Mario Kart. And to me, that's such a sad state to do it in, because let's be honest about kart racers. Kart racers are like Smash Bros. There's one really damn good one, and then there's a bunch of okay ones. Most of them are just one-offs, and then they're like, oh, we can't be Smash Bros, and we're not going to grow to try and be Smash Bros, so we quit. That's what it feels like with kart racers. They pop up occasionally, they're mediocre to bad, and then they're like, well, we couldn't be Mario Kart, we quit. And so instead of creating another entry on the racing game market that's a little more serious, a little less kart-based and more futuristic car-based, you know, because there are some similarities in genre there with racing, it feels to me like they're like, well, Mario Kart's got it covered. Who cares? No one even remembers who, Captain Falcon is. They just know him as the red helmet guy from Smash Bros.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's your fault. That is your fault,
their fault
that they don't know who it is. They'll do this stuff where it's like, well, people don't care about that. You haven't made it in like a decade and a half or 2 decades. Of course they don't care. Half of them don't know it exists, and it's your fault they don't know. Like, what do you want here?
Well, it's especially sad because the last game was F-Zero I'm Climaxing on the Game Boy Advance in 2004.
Oh, I thought this was like a new way to get a new GameCube startup. It was all like squishy and liquid sounding when you hit the climax.
But it's like, in 2 years from now, that'll be 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years since the last F-Zero game came out.
There's tons of gamers that have been born in that time.
Yes.
Who have never touched one.
Like, what is this? And the sad thing about F-Zero to me is F-Zero is not like any other, racing game like Sonic and All-Star Racing Transform or, something like that. It's not like that. Where you could argue that Sonic and All-Star Racing Transform is very similar to Mario Kart because it has a lot of the same style of racing and stuff like that. But F-Zero is so much different. The cars in the game are so much more fast-paced. It's so much more extreme. It's not like your standard like Mario game where you're like happy-go-lucky, like, oh, I just got a green shell.
Right.
It's
tense.
It's tense. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's epic. It's I don't know other adjectives to describe this, but it's so much more. It is so much more than just a Mario Kart.
Did you notice too? They kind of stole the zero-G part of this and put it into Mario Kart.
Yeah.
So like they take elements from F-Zero.
They do.
And use it on other stuff like Zero Gravity,
yeah,
the Blue Falcon, and the map obviously and stuff like that.
It's stupid. It's like this could be so much more of a game franchise. This doesn't have to be a Mario Kart remake.
We won't even
re-release
you had
fun. Hope you climaxed in 2004 because that's the last time we did.
They've been climaxing to money ever since. They don't care because they just make so much. It's just sad to me. And it makes me wonder what these games would be capable of, all of these franchises, on the newer, not new anymore, but newer tech of the Switch compared to when they were coming out. Because I think they all would be capable of more than they were in the past. I don't know, let us know what you think in the comments down below. What is your most underappreciated Nintendo franchise? Oh, that makes sense. For me, it's Mario. I don't think there's enough of them. It makes me mad. I want Mario bowling, and I want it now. So let us know what you think in the comments down below. Have a fantastic day. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And as always, everyone, stay shway.